Welcome to Restore the Glory podcast. My name is Jake Kim.
And I'm Bob Schutz.
We're two Catholic therapists sharing what we've learned personally and professionally to help you on the journey of restoration.
If you've been blessed by our podcast, please prayerfully consider partnering with us on Patreon. Your support will help cover the cost to produce the podcast, but will also give you access to exclusive content like monthly reflections and special live stream teachings. Go to patreon.com/restoretheglory and join the mission of experiencing the restoration of our God-given glory.
Hey, Bob. Good to see you once again. How are you doing today?
Doing well. A little heavy today. My grandson's fiance's mother's funeral today, so we just came from that. But otherwise good. Excited to have our guest on today.
Yeah, I am too. We'll keep her in our prayers. Yeah, for that's a sad loss.
Did I say my grandson's fiance's mother? I don't know if I made that clear.
Fiance's mother.
Wasn't his fiance died? Yeah.
His future mother-in-law.
Yeah.
That's hard. Bob, we're in a series here for, on therapists, I guess, for therapists before everybody. And, one of the reasons we wanted to do this is it's neat for us who haven't been in active practice for a while to, we stay in touch with a lot of therapists and we just picked 3 for this series that we're really excited about. And they're doing great things, particularly in the area of integration. Because the field of psychology, it's been around for a while, but, there's few domains, I think, that seem to leak or move away from the heart of the gospel. It's one of those that seems to be hard to stay in the kingdom, particularly when you go to grad schools and whatnot. So we get tons of questions. What grad school should I go to? Do you know a good therapist, et cetera? So we just thought, let's do a whole series where we bring in people kind of from the front lines who are doing the work every day, day in and day out, and just kind of hear what's going on for them and what they're facing. So really excited about our guest today, Christopher Lafitte. Christopher is a good friend of ours, does ministry with us. Christopher is always at the therapist events that we do. He's regularly with us at priest events. He's a avid cornhole player. He loves to beat us consistently. I will say that I'm not sure Christopher and I have ever lost being on the same team. We've had many people attempt to take us out, but so far that has not occurred. I don't know if that speaks of our skill or the skill of our competition. We'll leave that up in the air.
Pride comes before the fall.
Yeah, it's so good. Listeners, I'm sorry. You're like, we get a cornhole update every time we start the podcast. But Christopher is somebody who's right in there with us. So Christopher, just a little bit about, lives in Texas, has a thriving practice. He's, I would say top of the list when I'm thinking of somebody that I can refer to. Christopher's the first guy I think of. And usually that means because of that, he has no space, but that's okay because he's blessing a lot of people because he's serving the church well. So, Christopher, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Restore the Glory.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you guys.
It's a lot of fun.
I love hearing the intro. Hey, Bob. I'm like, yeah, there it is. There it is. Yeah. That's
you
how
get to see it live. Yeah, that is. It's pretty simple. Yeah. Christopher, there's so many things we want to get into, but just maybe a little bit, kind of orient us a little bit, like where do you live, like married, kids, schooling, and then we can, I want to hear the kind of the story of your formation because I think it's unique and interesting, but could also be really formative to a lot of the folks out there. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll get deeper into the counseling stuff.
Sure. So, I went to Texas A&M. I grew up in Northwest Houston, so it's about an hour and a half away. And I didn't have a clue who I was growing up, but Texas has a thing where if you're in the top 10% of your class, you get to go to whatever public university you want to. You get automatic admittance. And my dad was a petroleum engineer, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew a little bit about that. And so A&M had the #1 program. So I was like, hey, I'll just go to A&M. And, it's just the traditional path for most counselors. You start in petroleum engineering. And
exactly. I hear it all the time. Yeah.
Right. So I really wasn't super active in my faith, just went to mass on Sundays, but I had not had an encounter with the Lord, didn't really know him. I knew he was like a storybook character in my mind. I wouldn't have been able to say that at the time, but that was my experience, after encountering the Lord. But I went on a retreat my freshman year at Texas A&M, and I met the Lord. He spoke to me, and it was just a before and after moment. And I jokingly say that I majored in St. Mary's there, the campus ministry at A&M, because I just was, the Lord won my heart, and I just wanted to spend as much time as I could around him, with him. And I see now a lot of that has to do with just this ministry call, and there's a proximity to ministry that just my heart was made for. But I started learning to pray. One of the associate pastors at the time here did a lot with IPF, and so he just kind of formed a lot of us students in IPF. So it was great. But in the midst of learning how to pray, something very strange started to happen, and it was like people just started coming to talk to me. It was like I had a sign over my head that said, "Hey, if something's going on, come talk to Christopher."
Wow! And
people just started unloading just deep stuff, and I'm a freshman that doesn't even know who he is, and people are cheering so much with me, and it's like I just somehow know what to say, and they feel so safe with me, and they leave encouraged. And I was like, what is happening? This is so strange. And near the end of my freshman year, I was in a Bible study, and the Lord just spoke so clearly to me, and he said, "I want you to be a counselor." And I needed that clarity just of direction, because I would have just been an engineer, most likely. But it made sense given what he had been doing, the pattern I had been seeing. But I spent the summer just kind of sitting on that, discerning what to do. And I was working in the Louisiana bays on oil rigs with some roughnecks that summer.
Wow.
It was a rough summer, but yeah, good guys, but a salty crew up there. Came back and just, it was clear. That's what the Lord wanted me to do. So I switched to psychology and just headed down that route, and was planning on doing that after school. Dr. Sri, Edward Sri, came to A&M to give a talk, and I kind of took a detour after just having coffee with him after a talk, and it was just a sense that the Lord wanted me to go study theology at the Augustine Institute. And so I was like, well, Lord, you made it pretty clear. You wanted me to be a counselor. I don't know, but it's clear you want me to go study theology here. Maybe this counseling thing's supposed to be just something on the side. I don't know. But right around the same time after I graduated, I went on retreat with a retreat Bob was leading. And that was when everything sort of clicked into place. I had already really accepted my admission to the Augustine Institute. And when at the retreat with Bob, it was like the same gospel I had been hearing, but it was alive, and it was efficacious, and it was transforming actively. And I was just blown away at how I saw the Lord working, and just the teaching that Bob had. And it was like a tuning fork. I was coming in, and I was like, my heart was just singing the same song. And there's just a sense of like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, this is what I'm called to. And just talking with Bob a little bit about that, it was clear, like, yeah, I need to go on and get a master's in counseling as well. But the theology was just a foundation the Lord wanted to give me. And I really learned a lot from the Augustine Institute, just learned how to think, and just the witness of all the families and how they lived. It was such a beautiful experience being up there at the Augustine Institute. Still in touch with a number of those professors who were so formative. So yeah, I went to the Augustine Institute, and in the meantime, just was building relationship with Bob, and kind of a guinea pig for all the first time retreats and trainings and prayer ministry, and was a avid recruiter for them, unpaid. Just got a lot of people to go on retreats there, and
that's awesome.
The ministry started growing, and it was just beautiful to be able to have a community that was, really getting the gift of Bob's teaching, the teaching that the Lord wanted to really give the church through Bob, real fresh at the time, and a gift to be able to just discuss that together and grow in it together. And be able to share the Lord's healing love with people. So I went into Franciscan University with all of that background. And so it was very different than a lot of people going into therapy and then having to integrate the faith. For me, it was the opposite. I had this Catholic worldview of the human person and human psychology. And I was trying to integrate secular psychology and tools and modalities with this worldview and this mindset. So it was just a lot of wrestling, a lot of just trying to figure out how it integrated. And I didn't find a lot of people who understood it. But as time has gone on, it's become easier to talk through things and integrate all of it and have these discussions with people. But from that time with Franciscan, after that, we moved to Austin, where I did my post-grad hours with a great trauma therapist and a good group of Catholic therapists. And, we moved back to Texas because that's where our families were, and we're just moving back home close to family. And then ultimately, the Lord called me to go back to St. Mary's, the Catholic Center at Texas A&M, just to bring all of this to the campus ministry there. So it was a gift to be there and just offering this, just the healing of the Lord to the students there. And the students here they're so hungry. It's such a gift to be here in this environment. And it's not a Catholic university, but so people come into it without some of the pretense you can kind of get at other Catholic universities. And it kind of catches people off guard with just the way the Spirit is alive in many ways. And they're just so hungry. And so it was just a real gift to be able to be here for about 5 years, just doing therapy and giving just retreats and talks on healing. And about 3 years ago, I just discerned a call to step away to make myself more available to priests. And so been doing a lot more work with priests the past 3 years now. And through conversation with you, Jake, us talking, and just a certain disquiet in my heart, just realizing that the Lord really was calling me to do a little bit more of that than I thought. And so really trying to reserve, most, if not all, of my spots for priests now. But that's a little bit of the journey of the origins of my encounter with the Lord. And I think if I could sum it up, that's kind of that's what it's always been about for me is this encounter with Him. That's what brings about the transformation. That's what did it for me. That's what's continued to do it for me. And that's the goal.
And talk also about personal life, about your relationship with Stephanie and children and all that, just kind of background.
Yeah. So my wife and I met at St. Mary's, Stephanie. Yeah, God bless her. I had a lot of growing up to do, so she was patient with me initially, especially as a freshman when we first met, and just talking with me while I was out on the bays in Louisiana. And eventually we started dating our sophomore year of college, and got engaged when you first met her, Bob, when she went on a retreat after mine, and then got married, and then immediately that's when we moved to Denver. And then we just started collecting children. Everywhere we move, we collect a kid. So Gemma in Denver, Marie in Steubenville, Joseph in Austin, and then John Paul in College Station here.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. So it's cool. I think, it's funny, Christopher, hearing your story. It's similar to mine, where I went into psychology training and education after having had a lot of theology. And it's something that, the seminaries have a sequence that they do things on purpose, where they study philosophy before they study theology. And I think there's real value in therapists studying philosophy and theology before they study psychology, because once you have that worldview, it starts to make it to where you can really integrate stuff really well, like experiential therapies and cognitive therapies and all that. Like, you have a slot to put them, as opposed to, oh no, I have this modality that I like, and I've got to now somehow shove my Christian understanding of the human person into the modality. I think it's absolutely supposed to be the other way around. And I feel very blessed, I know you do too, that the formation happened the way that it did for you and I wish that that would be the norm for everyone, whereby, that's like when you look at our podcast, Bob, that's why we started with a whole series on the theology of the body, was to intentionally talk about anthropology before getting into psychology. So I know, Christopher, like it's just in your bones. Like you're a guy who therapy is just who you are. But, if you were invited to do if somebody said, hey, do you want to come do a talk on the integration of cognitive behavioral therapy, Gestalt therapy, and Christianity, you'd be like, I think I'll just see clients and I'm cool with that. That's always been
Yes.
to me, you're just made for that setting, which is just awesome. I think something that would be really cool for us, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm just excited to hear about this. So Bob, stop me if I'm going ahead of myself, but could you bring us into, like, let us be a fly on the wall when you're doing therapy? Because a lot of people go to therapy. They have preconceptions of therapy. All of our therapist listeners have concepts of what you do. And I've always been struck by, I think, your freedom to be able to do the therapeutic process it's similar to your formation where the gospel is first. So what does that look like? And go wherever you want with it. But I'm just like, can we be a fly on the wall? And what happens?
Yeah. I keep learning as time goes on that a lot of this is just intuitive, and I can't find the words. So maybe you guys can help me find the words in a little bit of this. But yeah, a lot of what I do is just, I go into a session, I go into just a time with somebody, and there's just a deep understanding that this person is made for communion with the Lord, and nothing in their life is going to make sense apart from that reality. Whether they realize it or not, that's what all their deepest desires or their hopes and dreams are all about. And it's a unique expression. They have a unique expression of how they're made to be with God, but that's what I'm holding in my heart. I'm just kind of in awe and admiring just this gift of a person and how they're made to be in communion with the Lord. It's with that worldview and that understanding and that sense of just awe and wonder at the person. But my heart just is sensitive to the glitches and the ways in which they're not living in that. And I'm just like, oh, right there. And so it allows me to see, I think, how they're not able to live in freedom and live in love. And I just make a note of that in either, just in my mind and my heart, or I write it down. And I'm just listening and just, receiving the person, but I'm just sensitive to the ways in which, they're not able to be who they are. And from those places, we begin a process of healing. And it's just a matter of what's the necessary, it's always just, does it feel like there's an open door to invite the Lord in so he can bring them back into communion? And if there's some sort of barrier, it's like, all right, well, what sort of therapeutic tool or modality is going to help them open their heart up here? Help them connect to themselves, help them express the pain, help them understand their story. What is the Lord desiring for them to help them understand themselves and, their origin and their destiny in Him?
So what strikes me as you're speaking, Christopher, is the phrase that you used for yourself when you were in college, and then describing those glitches as that same thing, which is, I didn't know myself, and that you're really in tune with the places where people don't know themselves because they don't know love, they don't know communion. So kind of take a step back, if you will, and before we go deeper into the process in therapy, about how important your own, not only encounter was, but your whole process of your own healing has been in that sensitivity and that intuition.
Yeah. First off, thanks for that insight. I've never noticed that before. It's interesting. Yeah. I would say if I'm not healing, I'm wasting everybody's time, because if I've arrived, like I'm no longer encountering the Lord, and I don't have anything to offer them. And so that process, being in process of healing and being transformed in God, that's my lifeline. It's everyone's lifeline that I'm working with. So it's just essential that I'm continuing to just open my heart up to the Lord and let him show me where I'm not free, where I need to grow in love. And if I'm not getting anything from him, I can just ask my wife and she'll be happy to tell me lots of things. And so I think, I remember in that retreat I was on with you, I received a little bit of healing when I was being prayed with, but there was just so much pain that began to surface the following day. And I came up to you after, and I'd already done my prayer time, but I was like, Bob, is there anyone that can pray with me? And you grabbed Jim and Lois, and you had said that they had discerned they weren't going to do prayer ministry that week, and so they were available for me. And I just remember going in to that room with them, and I wouldn't have been able to tell you why, but everything in me knew that I was safe and I was loved, and it was exactly what I needed. And so all this just stuff that just deep down in my heart, I just wasn't ever free enough to share, or I didn't feel safe enough to share. I was just able just to express it all. And I just cried and sobbed for 45 minutes just in the arms of love. Gosh, I'm kind of getting choked up a little bit now. Just the love they showed me. Man. And after just them just rubbing my back and hugging me and holding, just sobbing, this laughter in the spirit and this joy started coming for 20 minutes where I'm just laughing. As just the Lord just puts joy back into my heart, or places in my heart that just hadn't known joy for I don't know how many years. And it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about just how it's all about just loving somebody. And then if you need something else, you can use something else. But the foundation of it all is love. And that's what gives the safety for the heart to open up.
Yeah. Just to give people a picture of Jim and Lois, they were very dear friends of mine who were on our prayer team for years, and they're now deceased. He was in his mid-90s and she was in her 80s when they passed away. But they were the family I always went to when I needed to be filled up and loved, and they just had the gift of being a mother and a father, and they loved the Lord, and everywhere they went, they brought community. You just experience communion in their presence. And so it was, given what you needed, that was a beautiful place to go, because I knew that you were going to be loved well and that it was going to be safe. And that really is a picture of what healing is. And when we talk about healing as an encounter with God's love and truth that brings us into communion, that was there, because they loved the Lord and they loved the truth also, but they just knew how to love.
Yeah. And they even asked afterwards, after all that, that hour or so, they were like, was that helpful? Was that, you feel better? Like, cause they were just there trying to love me. They didn't know. Yeah. They just gave me a foundation of just what the healing process is all about. I mean, and looking back on it, I can see now I was the Lord catechizing me of like, this is how it begins. And this is what you need first. Otherwise, I might have just easily thought, it's the prayer ministry model, and this is it. You do the thing, and that's what brings healing. And it's love. It's only love.
That's where I was about to go, Christopher, which I think is amazing and at the same time really difficult for certain people. And let me explain what I mean, and maybe we could just start tossing around this idea. Christopher, you said something right at the beginning, just in passing, and it's one of those concepts that when you hear it, you go, oh, yeah. But it's like a night and day kind of concept, and it's very simple. The gospel is alive. The gospel is transformative. And I think that often we don't relate to Jesus, what he says and has on offer, as something that is alive, something that is active, something that when you interact with it, it changes you. What we can't deny is that that's what happens in the Gospels. And yet why is it that so often we don't experience that? And so I think one of the remedies that we've come up with, thinking we're brilliant, is I've got to analyze what's occurring, come up with my strategies, systems, steps, techniques, etc. And if I can master those techniques and systems and strategies, then I can reproduce them every time on demand. And then that's what good therapy is. And what's interesting there is when you're swimming in a current, you don't control the current. The current moves you. And it might move and it might not move. And it doesn't matter how many techniques you got, but if you're in a riptide and it's taking you out, you better get out of that riptide if you want to control it, or it has a will of its own and you are going where it's going. That's what I mean by like an analogy of alive. It's something that's alive and transformative. And when I'm imagining, Christopher, you in that session, I'm just picturing you walking in, and I'm it's almost like I got behind the one-way mirror, there's like all of us therapists, like, okay, let's go back in time. We're going to step behind the one-way mirror. We're going to analyze the heck out of this experience so we can extract all the techniques and then go reproduce them in our offices. And yay, people are transformed. And I imagine we would sit there and you would have walked in and they probably would have looked at you and smiled. And we're sitting there going, okay, nothing special, nothing magical happening yet. And then you start crying. We're like, whoa, hold on, pause. What the hell just happened? Like, what happened there? There was no fancy question. I didn't see the Rogerian thing that occurred there. And I think that's the point, is when people are disposed and surrendered to the kingdom and to the Spirit and to Jesus, all in for the glory and desire of the Father, things happen in the kingdom. And it's not about controlling them. It's just about ushering in and welcoming. Yes, there are principles, but so I think I'm here. You guys are hearing what I'm saying. I'm just curious, what comes up for you in this domain? Because Christopher, that session sounds like nonsense. It sounds ridiculous to the person who doesn't understand that the gospel's alive and transformative. They're like, you guys are all weird. No technique occurred. But yet you're saying, I left that room and I was different. And I know that's how you practice, is in that same modality. What is this? What is that? And what are your thoughts about what my take on what psychology tries to do with that?
Yeah, I think that's what's so disarming is you don't expect it to be as simple as being loved, and I think that's what makes therapy difficult is all the ways in which we're trying to protect ourselves from the ways we haven't been loved, and that's ultimately, I think, what all the techniques are about. Is it's helping navigate a heart and in a way that allows them to feel safe enough to be loved in their defenses and put their guard down and risk being loved. And I just think in those moments, there's no better lover than the Lord. So if you can help someone put their guard down and then, just help them just look right over there to the Lord and the way he's looking upon you, it's a game changer, a life changer.
Yeah. And just to be clear to everybody, you're trained in trauma therapy, EMDR, a lot of techniques. Yeah. So it's not like you don't have any technique tools in the toolbox, but that's not the emphasis.
Yeah, it's not the foundation.
Yeah. You're relying on those as tools to help free people with the Lord, not apart from him.
Right. And I was thinking about that as Jake was talking. My supervisor in Austin, I was so upset with her at first, and looking back on it, I'm so grateful. But she asked me when I first got there not to do any inner healing prayer with people, and I really needed to learn just the therapeutic modalities, and I needed to learn, become accustomed to them, and really master them. And I was just so heavily leaning on just pure prayer ministry that it wasn't allowing the prayer ministry I do now to be as effective because I didn't have the tools to help with the barriers once the barriers arose. Now that I've learned a lot about these different modalities and have taken, what I think is good in them. It's so much easier for me to walk people through the barriers that arise in their hearts, whatever the type of barrier, whatever the block to intimacy with the Lord. So I'm super grateful that she told me no there, because I think it's blessed a lot of people and it allowed me to grow in the clinical skills that I needed.
So I'm hearing you almost say, Christopher, that if somebody who is super well versed in all the psychological techniques was the fly on the wall watching you, they'd probably be able to label a lot of stuff that you do and go, oh, that's emotion focused therapy, that's cognitive behavioral therapy, but I think what I'm hearing you emphasize is, sure, if you want to take an activity that I just did and put a label of a therapeutic modality on it, sure, but that's not kind of your orienting principle. Like if you have a compass, what's pointing you to true north when you're in the office is ultimately, I see the good of this individual in front of me. And you're not having to like force yourself to see it. Like you believe in the good. One of the things we call it amongst ourselves is seeing the person in their wholeness. So I see them as God designed and love them. And then you start to move forward so that the Lord can restore that in them. And yeah, it's almost like I'm hearing you say, yeah, I know how to ask a reflective question, but you're not thinking at the time, reflective questions are the secret sauce. It's more of just like I'm just pulling this in because it's at the service of loving this person well, removing obstacles for them to have an encounter with the Lord. That's the point of the modality, not I do this modality all the time. I think we know therapists. Like I can think of therapists that all they will do is cognitive behavioral therapy. And that is what I'm going to do. You go outside of that, I'm not going to go there. Or EMDR. All I will do with you is EMDR. That's it. And okay. I'm hearing you almost say, no, I'm trying to integrate these principles into an overall approach here, which you could call loving people well. Like, I mean, is that fair? I mean, I think I know you well enough to say that with confidence, but I want to let you, is that fair? Like, yeah, you're not throwing the things out at the door. And if a Gestalt principle might help you, you would do it.
Yeah. I mean, it is loving people well. I think ultimately, though, it's helping them encounter the Lord's love. I kind of want to be meet my friend kind of guy. But at the same time, I think it's important that every therapist be themselves, and not everybody's going to do things the way that I do them. And they could be doing it with the Lord and run the program. It's just not the way I've found the Lord works through me.
Yeah. Let's go back to Jake's initial question. Okay, so now that we've kind of set that background, the question about, okay, we're watching you, you're there with the people.
Fly on the wall.
Yeah, and what's happening in the interaction, and how, you mentioned several things. You mentioned about you want to just receive them and then see the glitches, see the places where they're protecting themselves from broken love in the past. And so you become aware of that, and you want them to have an encounter with the Lord in those places. Just kind of talk through the process.
Yeah. So a lot of it just depends on, as you guys know, just the issue they're presenting with. So I'll just go generally, and then maybe we could, I don't know, pick a specific topic or issue or something. But, as someone's sharing, if, again, it's all about, being trained in the prayer ministry. It's all about just abiding with the Lord and just trying to pay attention to the movements that you're experiencing in your own heart that feel like the Lord, but also the movements you're seeing in them. And so as someone's sharing, I just may see that they need something in their worldview that they don't have. And so at that point, I'm discerning, okay, Lord, do you want me to just speak that in, and most of the time that's probably what it is. But I'm also discerning, Lord, do you want to speak that to them? And I may just ask them, just in the confusion you're experiencing right there, let's just invite the Lord in right there, see if he wants to speak anything to you. Not most of the time. There's just a sense of like, I just will give them something and then ask them, how that sits with them, and we'll unpack that. But, from a worldview standpoint, and if that's the need, that's how I'll handle that. Yeah. Any thought there?
Is there, yeah. So let's say someone's coming at, we're just going to make this up as we go. All right. So let's say I'm not going to pick a priest just because I want to distance ourselves a little bit from that, because that's primarily your caseload. And I don't want you to feel like you're breaking confidentiality in any way. So let's say that you've just got someone who's coming in. I mean, the most classic thing everybody seems to start with in therapy, often it's just interesting as I'm about to say this, is anxiety or depression of some kind. That seems to be the case almost across the board. And then, so somebody's coming in with anxiety and depression, and, you're starting to interact with them, and you're, I don't know why I'm so, depressed. I don't want to do anything. I have no joy in my life. And every time I think about getting up to go to work, I get anxious, and I don't know. I don't understand. It's affecting my parenting. It's affecting my marriage. I go to church on Sunday, I don't understand it, but I don't feel like I enjoy my life, and I just want to watch Netflix all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe now I'm the client. I didn't intend to make that the case, but I jumped off the fly. Now I'm in the chair, but anyway, yeah. So just, when you talk about confusion and that kind of stuff, what are you hearing there, Christopher? What's going on in your heart there as you're thinking about how to love this person and be with them?
Yeah. Yeah. First off, I always just want to know what their legitimate responsibilities are in life, what their vocation is, and how free or unfree they are just to fulfill those responsibilities in love. Because that's really what we're talking about here is helping someone grow in freedom to live in love. And so I would want to know, in their marriage, in their family life, in their work, where are you free to fulfill the responsibilities that you have, and where are you getting stuck there, as well as just the day to day. But what I found a lot of times is, a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but enough, will come to therapy, and it isn't for the sake of for the sake of love and of picking up their cross for another. It's they just want to stop hurting, and it's not bad, but it kind of is almost hedonistic sometimes if that's the start. And so if I notice that, that's where I will try to just help someone really come to understand like what they're called to in love and where their focus should be, and help them to see and we'll just talk about how their relationship is with their spouse, their family, and where they're getting hung up, where they're getting stuck there. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so let me press that a little bit. So somebody comes in depressed and you're asking those questions, and that just increases their depression. It's like, see, I'm not capable of that. And,
Yeah. So then it's right there. It's, I'm not capable. You can hear the sort of glitch right there. It's like, well, that's not who they really are. And so let's start right there. Tell me about how you don't feel capable, and we'll unpack that in the present. And in my mind, there's always, almost always something in the past that needs to be worked through right there, where that's become the belief in their worldview and their sense of self is they're not capable. But we just start unpacking that of what's in the depression, what's in the anxiety, what are the belief systems there, what are the emotions surrounding that, and we're logging that, and then you do the intake, and you're going through and listening for any trauma that's there, where some of that could start. But when you're getting those specific struggles on the surface, that's when you're really dialing into maybe past trauma that's rooted there, and either the Lord will reveal that, or they'll recall it as we're processing through it, and we'll go from there. But the goal is freedom. That's the focus. It's I want you free. And so what do we got to do to get your heart free here? That kind of drives it for me.
do you find that at those kind of moments, so you're in the process, you're doing that, you're listening. I'm hearing you say you're listening for anything that's contrary to what you know God desires for them. And that's what, like, you're calling it a glitch. It's like something that's off, and that could be a belief about themselves, other people, a vow. It sounds very similar to the principles of the anatomy of a wound. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. And back to the importance of my own healing, I think the more I come into my healing, the more sensitive I am to what's right and what's wrong. Because in the areas I haven't yet healed, I just have blind spots, and they'll tell me something, and it's evident that it's a lie, but I miss it. And I just don't notice it because I'm living in the same lie. And so I've noticed that as time has gone on, when all of a sudden I have another breakthrough in my heart. I mean, I just received a pretty, substantial healing a couple of weeks ago from the Lord. And in these last couple of weeks, there's been a couple people or certain situations, I'm like, oh man, that's why we've been getting stuck. Like, there's been that sort of problem. And we were both suffering from the same problem here, but it's like I can hear it and see it so clearly now. And there's been good fruit as we just invite the Lord into that and have them, let go of whatever they've been holding on to in that place.
Yeah, and I want to comment on that because that has an application to everybody who's doing any kind of ministry, but also for everybody who's living life, right? It's like we think if I could just figure out how to help this person, everything's going to be okay. Whereas the places of getting unstuck are inside me, right? And that's how I supervised for years as I was a supervisor, is people wanted to say, well, help me with this case. Well, tell me where you're stuck with it.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Because where you're stuck with it is what needs to be addressed, not where they're stuck with it. Because once you're unstuck with it, then you're going to be able to help them get unstuck with it just because you're going to have clear vision. But that's the same principle in marriage, right? I mean, you think about where are we stuck in our relationships, where we're stuck at the place of our own hearts. And so I love that. And I was in the same environment you were when that healing took place, and I could see your joy and I could hear the freedom. And you still didn't beat me in cornhole that time.
We didn't get to play after that happened. So let's be clear here.
That's awesome. You guys, so this is an interesting concept that's coming up, which we haven't touched on before, which is the relationship between the therapist. So I'll use technical terms here, between the therapist and the fruit that the client experiences. And so I'm going to say it bluntly, and maybe we can break this down. The therapist can get in the way of things happening for the client. And I believe this wholeheartedly. It's one of the reasons that when I'm looking, for a therapist for myself or trying to find one, and it's kind of this, semi-transparent principle that I bring in evaluating whether or not I'm going to refer to somebody is, number one, have they suffered? And number two, what have they done with their suffering? And so if you try to go and work with somebody who's never suffered and had a perfect life, I think that's a very hard position to be in a therapeutic setting. And so what's funny is I've heard people go, well, what about Jesus? And I'm like, he suffered pretty darn clearly. And it's almost like in their mind, they're like, oh, right. Like, I thought he kind of got a get out of jail free card and now he's not really helpful. It's like, no, what he did with his suffering was what was that's the critical part. And then Mary, she suffered deeply. She's got a name, Our Lady of Sorrows, because of the suffering, but it's what she does with it. So it's an interesting concept because I think sometimes as therapists, I know it's a temptation, and none of us therapists like to admit it, that, I got my training. I went and did the extra certifications. Pressure's on the client. That was one of the reasons that therapy was hard for me is I struggled to find the right balance there, because sometimes I would almost take too much on of what was going on in the room. and other times I wouldn't take enough on what was going on in the room. And so that was a hard dynamic. The point being, it was my dynamic that was in the room affecting the therapeutic process. And, the classical guys like Freud would say, oh, that's transference and countertransference. So sure, there are truths there that people put labels to that are express something in reality, regardless of whether or not Freud is, somebody that we trust 100% of the time. A dead clock's right twice a day. So it doesn't mean that the guy is worthy of 100% believability. So this concept of the therapist affects the process. Christopher, you're speaking to it. You're acknowledging it. Your journey matters in the room. Like, say more.
Yeah. It's quite humbling, but the Lord wants to work through us, and I just continue to see there's more fruit the more I let Him work. And it's interesting when I go into sessions with a lot of like confidence, we're ready to go. It's much less fruitful. And when I go into the sessions very poor and like, Lord, I need you, and I'm really like worried I'm not going to have what's necessary to help this person. It's like that's when it's usually more fruitful. Is just when I'm relying on Him. And so, I mean, as time has gone on, I'm just like, okay, that's it. Stay there. Stay needing the Lord and relying on Him. But yeah, it's letting the Lord, be the Lord for us. It's essential. It's everything.
Yeah, I think as you're saying, Jake, about, well, what about Jesus? He didn't suffer. We often talk about it's Him being able to enter in every place that we have to go. And so even when we haven't been there yet, even when our own personal healing hasn't been transformed, that's the beauty of bringing the person in communion with Jesus, right? It's like, I need to be poor enough to be able to do that, but He's the one who's going to bring the healing because He's the one who's going to be able to love completely. My love is going to create enough safety and enough awareness so that I'm not blinded to the things that are being brought up, but ultimately I'm going to bring the person in relation to Him in the places where they're stuck. And that's a lot of your work, Christopher, right? That's the majority of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's someone yesterday I was with, and we were in a particular, situation and trauma, and like it was very clear to me what the truth was, and I could have spoken that truth to that person, and it would have done nothing, absolutely nothing. Like it's just the person was just spinning their wheels, and they were stuck there, and we had gone back a number of times to that spot, and the we invited the Lord in, and He spoke like the same thing I would have said, but it was dramatically different, and it gave the person the joy and the peace they needed to move on from that place. I mean, and that's just how it is. It's just the Lord can do something we can't do. He can because it wasn't just the word that was spoken, it was the way He communed with Him in that place. It was the way he was able to integrate with his heart there, and it was Jesus sharing His own heart with Him in that place. It's just I can't do that. Jesus can. And so just giving the Lord space to do that is just such a game changer.
We had our previous guest on, Christopher, who talked a lot about using the Emmanuel approach. And I think that's just when we talk, I'm kind of poking fun at theory and technique. And obviously, if you don't have any of it, like you have to have orienting principles, otherwise you can't function. So listeners, if you're like, oh, okay, so the secret sauce is to walk in and smile and not do anything. No, there's a much more technical art to it than that. So that's me being I should probably be a little more clear and not goof around quite as much. But yeah, there's an art and a system to love, and there are principles within love that matter. Yeah, one of them is smiling, but that can't be the only thing to do. That gets weird really quick. But the principles and I think the point of Emmanuel approach is something that it has done a really good job of integrating, neuroscience, principles of the kingdom, how relationships work, et cetera. So I'm just curious, Christopher, for you, we in our made up case study here, depression, they have this core belief. Are you at that point thinking, let's see if this is rooted in an experience or a wound? or are you just inviting the Lord to speak right in that moment? Like how do you facilitate communion with the Lord? Do you have an approach, or is it just discerned in the moment?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, in that particular case, there's always a sense like, okay, I need more information here. And so it's like, what was your family life like? What were your, just hearing about their development. And I'm just kind of listening for an open door or a really closed door. Both are important. If there's a sense of like, there's a need for an encounter here, I'm just kind of, again, making bullet points in my mind of like where there's a need for the Lord. But then I'm just discerning with the Lord, and I don't know how to explain it, but there's just a sense sometimes of like right there, right now, this is the open door. This is where the Lord wants to come. And so I'll just invite and again, that's just, I think that's the Holy Spirit, but I'm just inviting them, to tell me more about this. What was going on at that time of your life, and what was that experience like? And I'm also mindful too of just things we know, like with depression, there's usually like a real disconnect with themselves, where they've suffered something and they're disconnected from their pain. And so I got to reconnect them to the part of their heart that's carrying all that pain, that's just weighing them down and heavy. I don't hold on to it, and we must do this, but I'm just mindful that's probably necessary. And I just allow that to kind of guide what my listening as well. But it just, as I hear the Lord kind of highlight something, we'll just explore that more. And then it's just a discernment of what the need is. Is it a worldview need? Is it they just need to know how good they are there? Is it they need an encounter with the Lord? Is it they just need to express trauma? Do they need to forgive? Do they need to renounce something? Like they're holding on to something and they need to really let that go. And do I need to explain to them what they're holding on to? Do they not see it? Do I need to explain to them why they need to let go of it? Do I need to explain to them why it's okay that they can't let go of it, and that there's just pain there, and like there's a sense of safety that comes with that? And are you ready to just little by little face the pain that's in that spot so you can let go of this? And then once the barriers are down, it's just either the Lord comes automatically because they're disposed and they're ready, or we just need to invite them in intentionally. But there's a lot of different things at work.
Yeah, sure. Let me give a very concrete example of this, because I think everything you described, if people can relate to it concretely, it's going to be helpful. So there's a woman years ago when I was in practice who her husband called me and said, my wife is in the hospital suffering from depression, and she's going deeper and deeper, and nothing's helping her. Can you talk to her on the phone? So this is on the phone, just a phone call. And so I'm just exploring just the same thing you're saying, exploring what's going on. Well, what was the catalyst before this? We find out was her youngest child leaving home. Okay, so immediately, what are we listening for? Abandonment pain, right? Loss, attachment loss. So she said, but I haven't been able to function. I'm just completely not able to function, and I don't know if I'm going to make it. So just within a few minutes praying, Holy Spirit, would you show her where the root of this pain is in her life? Because it was obvious this was not the beginning of the pain, it was the trigger of the pain. And she brought her back to her mother's death, which she had never grieved, right? And so this whole principle that you're talking about is depression is pain that hasn't been experienced and felt, and it's just getting more and more present there. And as she was able to go back and experience the grief there in the safety of the Lord's presence, and then Jesus being able to meet her in that place, she was able to get out of the hospital. She was transformed in that place because of that encounter, because she touched the source of that pain where the depression was. And that's what I'm hearing as you're describing the process, is very tangible places that you're bringing people back to, that the Lord's bringing people back to, and then meeting them there, and then freeing them in the places where they were bound up.
Right. Yeah, that's a good example. And I think the benefit of being in therapy and having that ongoing relationship is, there's just so much that you're able to just talk through, and just in a very ordinary sort of way, you're able to go back to some of these things and, Because what I find a lot of times, the way the Lord does like to work like that, where He'll just reveal the source and origin, but there's sometimes like just see the Lord really appreciates the ordinary, and He just wants us to do the ordinary, talk through it, and okay, let's just do some EMDR with this thing. Let's just work through the basic protocol here of just work through this trauma, and He just wants to give them time and space to process the experience, and it's fruitful. And then there's a peace that comes, like He's present in this peace afterwards. And so there's just something interesting about the therapeutic space that just just gives more time to touch on a lot of different areas of somebody's life. It's beautiful.
Christopher, I'm hearing you almost allude to something here. I just want to check with this, that I think sometimes when people think about integration work and integrating psychotherapy and the gospel, that an expectation enters in that maybe they're not aware of, which is extraordinary healing should be the norm. If it's not happening, I'm doing something wrong. And what I'm hearing you allude to there is an ordinary process. Now, that doesn't mean extraordinary things aren't happening. But again, I think there's this expectation of Jesus touched the leper, all the leprosy was gone, 5-minute exchange, never see them again. And I'm not hearing you describe that as being a norm in your practice, although it sounds like those happen. And what's interesting is I think it can get confusing. Why not? And you said something very subtle. The Lord appreciates just a normal course of things. I think we impose upon, I'm curious, Christopher, if you'd agree, I think we impose upon Jesus's methodology hurry. And we say, well, He did it quickly, therefore it should happen quickly. And then I think we're potentially missing something of the reality of the gospel and love and accompaniment. Those are all part of a healing process. Yes, there are extraordinary times where things like Bob, like what you're describing. But what I find is that when people expect that, the fruitfulness of their practice goes down, because Jesus is kind of trying to help them see, you're using me as a means to an end, and the goal isn't relationship. The goal is magic, almost, in a way. All my pain goes away, and now I don't need you anymore, Jesus. See you next time I'm in pain. And that's not the point of it. Would you agree, Christopher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jesus exemplifies that in just His patience with Peter. Peter, do you love me? Do you love me? And then he condescends and meets Peter where he's at. He's okay, not rushing things. And we like to rush it. We like to rush things for our own sake. I mean, we want freedom. We want healing as quick as possible. And I think that's good. But we've also got to accept ourselves where we're at, and learning to accept ourselves where we're at in process can be really hard. And helping people accept themselves where they're at in process is often an essential part of the healing process, because our brokenness causes a lot of suffering, and nobody wants that. But it's essential just to not put God in a box and let the infinite God be infinite, and just to trust that he's present, He's working, and we can just trust that as we're open to Him and we're relying on Him, He's going to give us what we need. And even if that means there's not a lot of fruit here, and this therapy here together may not be where He wants to give you healing. Like, there's no fruit. Let's pause it. And either that means He wants to just heal you somewhere else or with someone else, or what, you don't know, but just not to put God in a box. I think it's critical. It's critical. We know He wants to heal. I love how Mary Healy describes this in her book on healing. She says, Jesus never categorically refused healing to anyone that needed it whenever there was some type of sickness. Like, He always healed it, but that's different than the apostolic sufferings that come. You don't heal that. That's love. And that's just carrying your cross in a fallen world. But when it comes to sickness and things that are preventing us from living and abiding in love and fulfilling our legitimate responsibilities, we can count on the Lord that he wants to heal that. And we just have to trust that he's doing that right now. And where he's at with us right now, whether it takes, 5 seconds or 5 years, like he's tending to the heart exactly the way the heart needs to be tended to. And that just requires a lot of trust. And boy, that'll flare up a lot of abandonment wounds when you present that to somebody. But I mean, it's the truth. He's with us and he's caring for us. And we got to trust that.
Bob, anything you would add there, just in that difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary?
Yeah, I was thinking back to our podcast about the first order and second order change, difference between incremental and transformational change. And so much of therapy is the incremental change. It's those moments that we write about or talk about that are the transformational moments, because they make better illustrations, but they're not the daily stuff of therapy work. The daily stuff of therapy work, even though we may see transformation each session, it's still, there's a progressive building blocks. And, I know in my own life, there are places where I've had, like you talked about on the retreat, you had a huge breakthrough. You just had another huge breakthrough. But what about all the months leading up to that, Christopher, right?
Years
leading up to that.
Yeah.
And I know in my own life, we all have both of those. We all have these encounters that things really change. We also have these, God, when are you going to do this? How are you going to do this?
Yeah.
And then we begin to experience, as you said, abandonment. Like, God, do you love me here? Do you really want to heal me? Are you really even alive in this place? What's going on here? I don't know. But that can be as much maturity and growth and intimacy as the transformational moments.
Yeah.
A principle's coming to my mind that I don't know if I've ever thought about before. So just tell me what you guys think about this. Bonding, attaching, takes time. Healing, removal of pain isn't always, it can be the initial cause of a bond, but to have a deep attachment with someone takes time. It's because it's like this stuff that grows, they're like roots. They don't grow instantly, and that's the way that it was made. And so there's a nurturing to it. And all of the nurturing and attention and time and presence is what creates a very deep bond. That's the normative order that God put us in. And I've never thought about this before. I wonder if myself and maybe others at times have tried to heal the need for time to become attached. You follow what I'm getting at? It's almost like, how do I heal this thing that's taking too long? And I just want to heal that so I can get attached and get all, and Heather often says, I'm finding her saying this more often just in reflections about reality right now, that, man, the longing for heaven is you can see it almost everywhere. And I'm hearing her right now going, yeah, Jake, that longing to have the permanent, eternal depth of attachment, that's called heaven. And we're not fully there yet. We are in the process. And so I think it makes me, at times am I trying to actually heal something that's actually good? In other words, God's trying to grow my dependency on him. And so if you rush it, my dependency becomes like the seed that grows shallow roots, and then the wind knocks it over or the sun burns it up. How's that sit with you guys?
Yeah, that's a beautiful insight. I love that. And I think you can hear it as you describe that there's an attitude there. Like when we have that attitude, there's an attitude of self-reliance that we're living out of, where it's like, now I get to go do what I want to do apart from God because I'm healed. And it's like, that's the whole, like, that's, you've missed everything. Like we have missed everything at that point. Like learning that, like, we need him for our happiness. We need him in the littlest of things, and learning to live with him, dependent upon him for everything. That's what makes life so beautiful.
Yeah. As you're describing that, Jake, I was thinking of the difference between Jesus' healing encounters and his relationships, and so I was thinking about Joseph and Mary with Jesus, and the years, the 30 years, or however long Joseph was alive, the 30 years of bonding, and then the 3 years with the disciples. And, like, there is an ongoing daily interaction that's creating a trust and a bond and a surrender and an abiding and attachment. And they have to learn it over and over and over and over again. The disciples, you who have little faith, you who have little trust in me.
Yeah.
Right. Which is the key to attachment is trust.
Yeah. And you hear John in his first letter, we bring to you, we tell you what we have heard, what we've seen, what we've touched with our hands. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, we don't hear much about the people who have been healed afterwards. We do hear about a Mary Magdalene who now becomes part of that attachment process, but we don't hear much about the blind guy after the blind guy's healed or the leper's healed,
Yes.
And even he sometimes sends them back to their own people for their own, attachment.
Go be with your community.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if at times that, sometimes typology becomes helpful to interpret larger grids of reality. And so we use the scriptures and we take a story like the one I'm thinking of right now is the feeding of the 5,000. So if we say that the wound was hunger and Jesus heals the wound by feeding the 5,000, what becomes interesting is that he later on questions their desire. Why are they back? Are you back just because I gave you a meal the last time? Or are you back because you want me? And I'm like, there's times where we follow the Lord because we're like, he does incredible things. I just want to see what the next incredible thing he does. Or he takes care of my basic needs. But I think the invitation is always one into greater and greater intimacy where he starts to become what feeds us. And that messaging is what you got in the inner circles. So he feeds the 5,000. And if I'm the 5,000th dude, like way across on the field and I'm eating, I'm like, man, this is awesome. This guy's great. Maybe he'll be back next Sunday and I'll get another free meal. This will be sweet. But maybe I didn't even hear the invitation of, stick with me. I've got way more I want to do with you other than just offer you pancake breakfast on Sunday. So it's like, interesting. I think there's just maybe an interesting analogy there. Christopher, I'm actually surprised. I'm like, whoa, this flew by. I just looked at the time, like we're already at time. Thanks for coming on, dude. It's so awesome to have you and to be with you. And I, on behalf of so many people who've been blessed by you, thank you for what you do on the day-to-day. You live a very quiet ministry, and I've always respected that about you. And so I'm conscious in my head, I'm a podcast host, and I'm about to go, and good luck trying to get a hold of Christopher because he is hard to find. Yeah,
I do want to share one place that people can experience more of Christopher, which is the three of us are going to be doing a webinar that's going to go. I believe it's in October, right? The first week of October.
Yeah.
And it's going to be on sexual healing.
We'll put all the details in the show notes for it, but.
Yeah, but it's going to be a Friday night and all day Saturday. It's not just for therapists. It's for anybody in the helping professions. And you'll get to see the three of us together kind of consecutively developing a theme and helping others with that. And Christopher's also going to Honduras probably by the time this comes out, and he's going to be teaching a whole group down there of seminarians and priests and missionaries how to pray like this.
That's so cool. Christopher, I mean, it's such a gift to know you, and I'm not really joking by saying it's hard to get a hold of you. And so I know, and the reason I'm say that tongue in cheek, but the reason is this is a way that you've chosen to do ministry, and I know that you have people can access you, but you have a strong preference for working with clergy. And so, if there's clergy out there, and I don't even know if you have any openings right now, Christopher, but if there's clergy out there who are interested, you can reach out to our website, reach out to us via the Restore the Glory website, and we can help see if Christopher has any availability. So, man, brother, it's awesome. And thanks for all the gifts that you're bringing to the church and for all the work that you do and just the example that you are. It's a gift. It's a pleasure to know you, and I'm grateful for all the people that you're serving and blessing. And a lot of people Christopher is blessed, though, on their behalf as well. Thank you. So,
thank you, Jake.
Listeners, we hope this episode bless you, and we will talk to you again soon.